For thousands of years, the Ark of the Covenant has remained one of the most mysterious objects ever described in ancient history. According to biblical accounts, the Ark was constructed during the time of Moses, a sacred chest made from acacia wood, covered entirely in gold, and said to contain the stone tablets of the Ten Commandments. But the Ark was never described as an ordinary religious object. Ancient texts spoke of it with fear. Only certain priests were permitted to approach it. Only specific rituals could be performed near it. And according to the stories, those who touched the Ark improperly often died suddenly. To the ancient Israelites, the Ark represented the presence of God itself. It traveled before armies during times of war, through deserts filled with dust and heat, through battlefields soaked in blood, through the uncertain darkness of the ancient world. And wherever the Ark appeared, strange events were said to follow. One of the most disturbing stories appears in the first book of Samuel. After the Ark was captured by the Philistines, their cities were allegedly struck by widespread illness, panic, and death. The Ark was eventually returned to the Israelites out of fear, but the mysteries surrounding it did not end there. Another account describes a man named Uzzah, who reached out to steady the Ark as it began to shake during transport. The moment he touched it, he collapsed and died. To modern readers, stories like these sound impossible, and yet they continue to fascinate historians, theologians, researchers, and storytellers even today. Why would ancient people describe a sacred object with such terrifying detail? Why was the Ark treated almost like something dangerous, something unstable, something powerful? Some historians believe these descriptions were purely symbolic, a way of expressing divine authority and sacred fear. But others have proposed a far stranger possibility. What if the Ark was not only a religious artifact, but also a form of ancient technology? Over the years, various speculative theories have emerged surrounding the Ark of the Covenant. Some researchers have compared the descriptions to electrical phenomena. Others have suggested the possibility of chemical reactions, electromagnetic energy, or forgotten forms of ancient engineering. These theories remain highly controversial. There is no accepted scientific evidence proving the Ark possessed supernatural or technological powers, and most historians view such ideas as speculation rather than fact. Still, certain details continue to raise unsettling questions. Ancient texts repeatedly describe strict handling procedures surrounding the Ark. Special poles were required to carry it. Direct physical contact was forbidden. Specific garments were worn during rituals. And according to some interpretations, improper interaction could result in sudden death. To skeptics, these were simply religious traditions, but to others, the descriptions resemble instructions surrounding something hazardous, something capable of producing deadly consequences, perhaps even something ancient people themselves did not fully understand. The strange fascination surrounding the Ark has only grown stronger in modern times. Writers, mythologists, and documentary researchers have spent decades attempting to uncover what the Ark may have truly represented. Some view it as a lost spiritual symbol. Others imagine it as a forgotten machine from a vanished civilization. And some believe the Ark's true meaning was never intended to be understood literally at all. Perhaps the Ark survives because it represents something deeper within the human imagination. A fear of hidden knowledge, a fear of forbidden power, or perhaps a lingering suspicion that ancient civilizations may have known far more than we assume today. The truth, if there is one, has likely been buried beneath centuries of myth, translation, religion, and speculation. The original Ark has never been conclusively found. Its final resting place remains unknown. Some believe it was hidden beneath Jerusalem. Others claim it was taken to Ethiopia, and countless legends continue to describe secret chambers, lost temples, and hidden guardians protecting its location. But regardless of where the Ark may be today, its legend continues to endure, because somewhere between history and mythology, Between religion and mystery, the Ark of the Covenant became more than an object. It became an idea powerful enough to survive thousands of years. And perhaps that is the greatest mystery of all. For centuries, the Ark of the Covenant was viewed primarily as a sacred religious artifact, a symbol of divine authority, a holy object carried by the ancient Israelites through war, through exile, and through the uncertainty of the ancient world. But over time, a different interpretation slowly began to emerge. What if the Ark was more than symbolic? What if the terrifying stories surrounding it were not entirely metaphorical? And what if ancient people were attempting to describe something they themselves could not fully understand? In modern times, a number of writers, researchers, and speculative historians have proposed a controversial theory. The theory suggests that the Ark of the Covenant may have functioned as some form of ancient technological device, perhaps even a weapon. To many scholars, this idea sounds absurd, but supporters of the theory often point toward the strange details found within ancient texts. The Ark was not meant to be touched directly. Special poles were required to carry it. Specific rituals had to be followed precisely, and according to biblical accounts, those who violated these rules sometimes died instantly. Some researchers have compared these descriptions to the handling procedures surrounding dangerous forms of energy. Others speculate about static electricity, chemical reactions, or electromagnetic discharge. Again, there is no accepted scientific evidence supporting these claims. Most mainstream historians reject the idea entirely, but the fascination persists, partly because the ancient descriptions themselves remain so unusual. The Ark was allegedly capable of bringing destruction upon entire groups of people. Ancient accounts describe panic, disease, and sudden death associated with its presence. Some stories even describe enemies collapsing after confronting it during battle. To believers, these were acts of divine judgment. But to speculative researchers, the descriptions sometimes resemble the effects of an unknown force, a force interpreted through the language of religion and mythology. One of the most controversial modern interpretations comes from investigative mythologists and alternative history researchers who suggest that ancient civilizations may have possessed forms of knowledge now lost to time. Knowledge involving sound, energy, frequency, or technologies that ancient cultures interpreted as sacred power. According to these theories, the Ark may not have been magical in the supernatural sense. Instead, it may have represented advanced knowledge misunderstood by later generations, perhaps something mechanical, perhaps something electrical, or perhaps something entirely outside modern understanding. Some speculative writers have even compared the Ark to a kind of portable energy device, a sacred machine carried between temples and battlefields, a source of immense power hidden beneath layers of ritual and symbolism. To skeptics, such theories are little more than imaginative reinterpretations of ancient religious stories, and many historians point out that human civilizations have always explained mysterious events through mythological language. Lightning became divine wrath, disease became punishment from the gods, natural disasters became omens. From this perspective, the Ark may simply reflect humanity's tendency to transform fear into legend. Yet the mystery refuses to disappear because certain questions continue to linger. Why were the handling instructions surrounding the Ark so strict? Why did ancient texts repeatedly emphasize danger? And why do so many cultures throughout history describe sacred objects associated with destructive power? The further researchers look into ancient mythology, the more strange parallels begin to appear. Stories of divine weapons, forbidden energy, objects capable of destruction beyond human understanding. Ancient India describes celestial weapons capable of blinding light and devastating force. Greek mythology spoke of thunderbolts wielded by the gods. Other traditions described sacred objects that could unleash fire from the heavens. Most scholars view these stories as symbolic mythology, but speculative theorists wonder if fragments of forgotten knowledge may exist beneath the legends, not necessarily alien technology, not necessarily supernatural power, but perhaps evidence that ancient people encountered phenomena they struggled to explain. And so, the Ark of the Covenant slowly transformed within the modern imagination, no longer viewed solely as a religious artifact, but as a possible remnant of something older, stranger, and far more dangerous. Whether these theories contain any truth remains unknown. There is no archaeological evidence proving the Ark functioned as a weapon, no recovered technology, no scientific verification. Only stories, ancient texts, speculation, and the enduring human fascination with mysteries hidden beneath history itself. Perhaps the greatest power of the Ark was never physical at all. Perhaps its true power lies in uncertainty, because as long as the Ark remains lost, its meaning remains open to interpretation. A sacred relic to some, a forgotten machine to others, and to many, one of history's most haunting, unanswered questions. Throughout history, human civilizations have left behind extraordinary monuments, massive stone structures, and mysterious artifacts that continue to challenge modern understanding. The pyramids of Egypt, the ancient temples of South America, gigantic megalithic stones fitted together with astonishing precision, underground chambers hidden beneath forgotten cities. Even today, many researchers still debate how some of these structures were constructed using the tools supposedly available at the time. To mainstream historians, these achievements are the result of human ingenuity, organization, and centuries of accumulated skill. But to speculative researchers, another possibility lingers quietly beneath the surface. What if certain ancient civilizations possessed forms of knowledge that were later lost? Not necessarily modern technology as we understand it today, but perhaps techniques, principles, or scientific understanding that disappeared through time. The idea of lost ancient knowledge has fascinated humanity for generations. Nearly every civilization carries legends describing a forgotten golden age, an era when gods walked among humans, when sacred knowledge was passed down to chosen individuals, and when mysterious powers shaped the ancient world. Some myths speak of weapons capable of destroying entire cities. Others describe flying machines, energy from the heavens, or gateways between worlds. Most scholars view these stories as mythology, symbolic tales created to explain the mysteries of existence, yet certain details continue to inspire speculation. Ancient Indian texts describe celestial weapons known as astras, weapons capable of blinding light, violent explosions, and immense devastation. The Mahabharata contains passages that some modern writers have compared to descriptions of advanced warfare. Again, there is no evidence these stories describe literal ancient technology. Most historians interpret them as poetic mythology, but the imagery remains strangely powerful. In Greek mythology, the gods wielded thunderbolts capable of destroying armies. In Mesopotamian legends, divine beings possessed knowledge hidden from ordinary humanity. And across countless cultures, stories emerge describing sacred objects infused with immense power. Some speculative researchers believe these myths may preserve fragmented memories of forgotten technologies, not machines in the modern sense, but forms of knowledge later transformed into religious symbolism. Perhaps ancient people encountered natural forces they could not fully explain, or perhaps certain scientific principles were discovered, then lost during the collapse of civilizations. History itself is filled with disappearances, libraries destroyed by fire, empires erased through war, entire cultures buried beneath sand, jungle, or ocean. And with each collapse, knowledge vanished alongside them. The Library of Alexandria alone is believed to have contained countless ancient texts now lost forever. What ideas disappeared within those walls? What discoveries were forgotten? We may never know. Some researchers argue that humanity tends to assume technological progress moves only forward, but history is rarely that simple. Civilizations rise, civilizations fall, knowledge survives, then disappears, and, sometimes, only fragments remain behind in myth and legend. This uncertainty has fueled generations of speculation surrounding ancient technology. From theories about hidden energy systems beneath the pyramids to stories of lost civilizations buried beneath the ocean floor, the human imagination repeatedly returns to the same haunting possibility: that perhaps ancient people knew more than we realize, not because they possessed futuristic machines, but because human history may be far older, far stranger, and far more complex than it appears on the surface. Still, mainstream archaeology strongly cautions against these interpretations. Experts point out that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and so far, there is no verified proof that ancient civilizations possessed advanced technology beyond what historians currently understand. Most mysterious structures can ultimately be explained through engineering, labor, mathematics, and human determination. Yet the fascination continues to endure because ancient ruins possess a strange emotional power. Standing before massive stone temples thousands of years old, many people experience the same feeling: a sense of distance, a sense of mystery, and perhaps a subtle awareness of how much of the past has already been lost forever. Maybe that is why theories surrounding ancient technology remain so compelling. Not because people necessarily believe them literally, but because they touch something deeper within human curiosity. The fear that history is incomplete, the possibility that forgotten chapters of the human story still remain hidden beneath the earth, waiting to be discovered, waiting to be remembered, and somewhere between myth, history, and imagination. The ancient world continues to whisper its unanswered questions into the modern age. Across ancient mythology, one strange idea appears again and again: the idea of gateways, doorways between worlds, sacred portals connecting humanity to the divine, to distant realms, or to places beyond ordinary understanding. These stories emerge across civilizations separated by oceans, languages, and thousands of years of history. And yet the similarities between them can sometimes feel strangely unsettling. In modern times, some speculative researchers have used the term Stargates to describe these mysterious portals, not necessarily as literal machines from science fiction, but as symbolic or mythological gateways tied to sacred locations, spiritual experiences, or hidden forms of knowledge. The concept itself is ancient. In Mesopotamian mythology, the gods descended from the heavens and passed through sacred gates between divine and earthly realms. Ancient Egyptian texts described portals connected to the afterlife, vast cosmic journeys through hidden dimensions beyond death. And in countless religious traditions, temples were viewed not merely as buildings, but as sacred points of connection between worlds. Places where heaven and earth became temporarily linked. Some researchers believe these stories are purely symbolic, representations of spiritual transformation, human consciousness, or the mystery of death itself. But others have wondered whether ancient cultures may have been attempting to describe experiences they could not fully explain. Experiences interpreted through the language of mythology. Throughout history, certain locations have repeatedly attracted stories of unusual energy, visions, and supernatural encounters. Ancient temples, stone circles, underground chambers, mountains regarded as sacred for thousands of years. Even today, people continue to report strange emotional sensations in places tied to ancient ritual and mythology. Feelings difficult to explain logically, a sudden sense of awe, disorientation, fear, or an overwhelming feeling of presence. Science generally attributes these experiences to psychology, suggestion, environmental factors, or the emotional impact of sacred architecture. But speculative theorists continue searching for deeper explanations. Some believe ancient civilizations intentionally constructed sacred sites in locations associated with unusual natural energies. Others suggest that certain rituals may have altered human consciousness, creating experiences interpreted as contact with divine realms. And then there are the more controversial theories. Theories suggesting ancient cultures may have possessed hidden knowledge involving sound, frequency, geometry, or consciousness itself. Again, there is no accepted scientific evidence supporting the existence of literal stargates, no verified portals, no proven ancient machines capable of opening doorways between worlds. Most archaeologists strongly reject such interpretations, yet the fascination persists. Because humanity has always been drawn toward the idea that reality may contain hidden layers beyond ordinary perception. Ancient myths repeatedly describe chosen individuals entering sacred spaces and emerging transformed. Prophets, priests, mystics, kings, people who crossed symbolic thresholds and returned with forbidden knowledge. Perhaps these stories were spiritual metaphors. Perhaps they reflected altered states of consciousness produced through ritual, meditation, or isolation. Or perhaps they simply represent humanity's eternal desire to believe there is something beyond the visible world. The modern fascination with stargates may ultimately reveal more about the human mind than about ancient technology. Humans have always searched for hidden doors, doors to immortality, doors to enlightenment, doors to divine understanding. And maybe that is why these stories continue to survive, because deep within the human imagination, the idea of a hidden gateway remains profoundly powerful. A secret entrance waiting somewhere beneath forgotten ruins, inside ancient temples, or buried beneath the sands of history. A threshold between the known world and the unknown. Some speculative writers have even connected these ideas to the Ark of the Covenant itself, suggesting the Ark may have functioned not only as a sacred object, but as a kind of bridge between humanity and divine power, a connection point between worlds. These theories remain entirely speculative, but they continue to capture public imagination because they blend mythology, history, religion, and mystery into something larger than simple fact, something atmospheric, something timeless. And perhaps that is the true power of these ancient stories, not that they provide answers, but that they leave humanity forever searching for hidden doors within the darkness of the unknown. Because somewhere in the ruins of forgotten civilizations, beneath myths whispered across thousands of years, the ancient world still seems to suggest the same unsettling possibility. That reality may be far stranger than we are willing to admit, as theories surrounding ancient technology, sacred objects, and mysterious gateways continue to spread. Many researchers begin asking the same question. Are these stories truly separate, or are they fragments of a much older pattern hidden beneath human history? Across civilizations separated by vast distances and thousands of years, certain symbols and ideas appear again and again. Sacred light, divine knowledge, forbidden power, gateways between worlds, and objects said to possess extraordinary abilities. To skeptics, these similarities are natural. Human beings across history have always searched for meaning through myth and symbolism. Different cultures often create similar stories because they share the same fears, the same hopes, and the same unanswered questions about existence itself. But speculative researchers believe the parallels may run deeper. Some point toward recurring symbols found across ancient civilizations. Winged beings descending from the heavens. Circles of light, sacred mountains, hidden chambers beneath temples, stories of gods bringing knowledge to humanity, only for that knowledge to later disappear. Again and again, human history seems to return to the same mysterious themes. Some theorists suggest these connections may preserve fragments of forgotten cultural memory. Perhaps stories passed down across generations, slowly transformed into mythology over thousands of years. Others believe ancient civilizations may have once been connected through trade, migration, or shared systems of spiritual knowledge. And then there are the more controversial ideas, theories proposing that ancient people may have encountered phenomena beyond ordinary understanding, events interpreted through religion because no other language existed to explain them. This is where speculation surrounding the Ark of the Covenant, ancient weapons, and Stargates begins to merge together. The Ark becomes more than a sacred chest. It becomes part of a larger mystery involving hidden knowledge and lost power. Ancient temples become more than religious structures. They become possible centers of forgotten wisdom. And myths once dismissed as fantasy begin to appear strangely interconnected. Some researchers have even attempted to trace geometric alignments between sacred sites across the world. The pyramids of Egypt, Stonehenge, ancient cities in Mesopotamia, temples in South America, sacred mountains in Asia, to mainstream archaeology. Most of these patterns are coincidence, symbolic design, or the natural result of human civilization developing around astronomy and geography. But speculative writers see something else: a hidden network, a forgotten system, an ancient understanding of the world that humanity has somehow lost. Whether these ideas contain any truth remains deeply uncertain, because the deeper one travels into these theories, the more difficult it becomes to separate evidence from imagination. And perhaps that uncertainty is part of the fascination itself. Humans are natural pattern seekers. We search for meaning in symbols, connections in chaos, stories within fragments, and once enough, mysterious pieces begin to overlap. The mind instinctively attempts to assemble them into something larger. Perhaps that is why ancient mysteries remain so powerful in the modern world, not because they provide clear answers, but because they suggest the possibility that history may still contain hidden layers waiting to be uncovered, a forgotten chapter buried beneath religion, mythology, war, and time itself. Even modern psychology offers possible explanations for why these patterns feel so compelling. Carl Jung described the idea of archetypes, universal symbols and themes that emerge naturally across human cultures. The wise old figure, the sacred object, the hidden doorway, the journey into darkness. According to this perspective, many ancient myths may reflect shared structures within the human subconscious rather than literal historical events. And yet, even with these explanations, the mysteries continue to endure, because there remains something strangely haunting about the possibility that ancient civilizations knew something humanity has forgotten. Not necessarily advanced machines, not necessarily supernatural power, but perhaps a deeper relationship with symbolism, ritual, nature, or consciousness itself. As the modern world grows louder, faster, and increasingly disconnected from the ancient past, these forgotten stories continue calling people back toward mystery, back toward ruins buried beneath the earth, back toward sacred symbols hidden within old texts, back toward questions with no clear answers. And perhaps that is the connection tying all these mysteries together. Not technology, not lost weapons, not hidden gateways, but the timeless human desire to search beyond the visible world, to believe that somewhere beneath history, something important still waits to be discovered. As fascinating as these theories may appear, most historians, archaeologists, and scientists remain deeply skeptical of claims involving ancient advanced technology, mysterious weapons, or hidden stargates. And for good reason. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. So far, no verified archaeological discovery has proven the existence of ancient machines capable of supernatural destruction. No confirmed technology hidden beneath the pyramids. No functioning portals buried beneath forgotten temples. and no scientific evidence that the Ark of the Covenant possessed literal technological power. To mainstream scholars, many of these theories rely heavily on speculation, selective interpretation, and the human tendency to search for mystery within the unknown. Ancient myths, according to historians, were never intended to function as scientific records. They were symbolic stories, religious narratives, poetic attempts to explain the world before modern science existed. Lightning became divine wrath. Disease became punishment from the gods. Solar eclipses became omens of catastrophe. From this perspective, stories surrounding sacred objects and divine weapons reflect the fears and beliefs of ancient cultures rather than forgotten technology. The Ark of the Covenant itself, according to most biblical scholars, was likely understood by ancient Israelites as a sacred symbol representing divine presence and covenant. Its terrifying descriptions reinforced religious authority and spiritual fear, not scientific power. Likewise, many structures often cited in alternative history theories can be explained through known engineering methods. The pyramids, for example, were built over decades using massive labor forces, mathematical planning, and remarkable organizational skill. Archaeologists argue that ancient people were fully capable of extraordinary achievements without requiring lost civilizations or advanced technology. And while some ancient construction methods remain partially debated, there is no evidence suggesting impossible or supernatural origins. Psychologists also point toward another important factor. The human brain is naturally designed to search for patterns, even when no real connection exists. This phenomenon is sometimes called pattern recognition or apophenia. Humans instinctively connect symbols, events, and coincidences into larger narratives, especially when facing incomplete information. And ancient history is filled with incomplete information. Lost texts, destroyed civilizations, missing records, unexplained ruins. Within these gaps, the imagination often begins constructing possibilities. This does not mean people are foolish for exploring mysteries. Curiosity itself is a deeply human trait, but science depends upon evidence, testing, and repeatable verification. And many ancient mystery theories ultimately fail under scientific scrutiny. Some claims rely upon mistranslations of ancient texts. Others exaggerate archaeological discoveries, and many theories spread widely through television, books, and internet culture despite lacking strong historical support. Yet skepticism itself does not erase the emotional power of these mysteries, because even when rational explanations exist, ancient ruins and forgotten legends continue to inspire awe. Standing inside a temple thousands of years old, many people experience something difficult to describe: a sense of smallness, a sense of distance from the ancient world, and perhaps a subtle awareness of how much human history has already vanished forever. Science can explain how stones were moved, how structures were designed, how myths emerged from human psychology, but science does not remove the emotional atmosphere surrounding these places. And perhaps that is why these stories continue to survive generation after generation, not because they are necessarily true in a literal sense, but because they speak to something ancient within the human imagination, a desire to believe there is more beneath the surface of reality, more beneath history, more beneath ourselves. In many ways, the conflict between skepticism and mystery reflects two equally human impulses. One seeks evidence, logic, and measurable truth. The other seeks wonder, meaning, and hidden possibility. Perhaps both are necessary. Without skepticism, humanity becomes vulnerable to illusion. But without mystery, the world risks becoming spiritually empty. And somewhere between these two extremes, between science and speculation, the ancient stories continue to endure, not fully proven, not fully dismissed, suspended forever in the uncertain space between belief, history, and imagination. Because sometimes the greatest mysteries are not the ones humanity solves, but the ones humanity continues returning to again and again, across generations, across civilizations, and across time itself. For thousands of years, human civilizations have created stories about hidden knowledge, sacred objects, forgotten worlds, and mysterious forces beyond ordinary understanding. Empires have risen and collapsed. Languages have disappeared. Entire cities have vanished beneath deserts, jungles, and oceans, and yet the stories remain. The question is, why? Why do ancient mysteries continue to fascinate humanity generation after generation? Why do stories surrounding lost civilizations, divine weapons, sacred relics, and hidden gateways continue to survive even in the modern scientific age? Part of the answer may lie within human psychology itself. Human beings are naturally drawn toward mystery, toward unanswered questions, toward the possibility that something larger exists beyond everyday reality. Modern life often feels predictable, measured, explained through data and technology. But ancient mysteries offer something different, a feeling that not everything has been fully understood, a feeling that somewhere beneath history, something unknown still waits in the darkness. Psychologists suggest that mystery activates deep emotional and cognitive responses within the human mind. Uncertainty creates fascination. Incomplete stories invite imagination, and unresolved questions remain emotionally alive far longer than simple answers. Perhaps this is why forgotten ruins affect people so deeply. Standing before ancient stone structures thousands of years old, many experience the same strange sensation, a feeling of connection to something distant and unreachable, a reminder that human history extends far beyond any individual lifetime, and perhaps also a reminder of how temporary civilizations truly are. Ancient mysteries survive because they allow modern people to project meaning onto the unknown. For some, these stories represent spiritual longing. For others, they represent rebellion against purely material explanations of reality. And for many, they simply awaken a childlike sense of wonder often lost in adulthood. Stories about the Ark of the Covenant, Stargates, or forgotten technologies may not survive because people fully believe them. They survive because they feel symbolic of something deeper, the fear of lost knowledge, the desire for transcendence, the hope that humanity once possessed a greater connection to the universe. Carl Jung believed myths survive because they emerge from universal structures within the human subconscious. Archetypes, symbols repeated throughout human history, the sacred object, the hidden doorway, the ancient teacher, the forbidden truth. These images appear again and again across civilizations because they reflect shared psychological patterns embedded deeply within the human mind. In this sense, ancient mysteries may reveal more about humanity itself than about literal historical events. The stories become mirrors, reflections of human fear, hope, curiosity, and imagination. At the same time, history itself remains incomplete. New discoveries continue to emerge from beneath deserts, oceans, and ancient ruins every year. Entire civilizations once believed mythical have later been proven real. Lost cities rediscovered, forgotten languages decoded, artifacts uncovered beneath layers of earth and stone. Because of this, the line between myth and history sometimes becomes difficult to separate completely, and perhaps that uncertainty is precisely what keeps these stories alive. Not certainty, not proof, but possibility. The possibility that somewhere beneath the ruins of the ancient world, pieces of humanity's forgotten past still remain hidden, waiting to be uncovered, waiting to challenge what we believe about history, about civilization, and perhaps even about ourselves. Modern media has also played a powerful role in keeping these mysteries alive. Documentaries, books, films, late-night radio broadcasts, internet forums filled with speculation and debate. Each generation reinterprets ancient stories through the lens of its own fears and technologies. In earlier centuries, people imagined divine miracles. Today, some imagine lost civilizations, hidden energy, or forgotten science. The language changes, but the fascination remains remarkably similar because beneath every theory, every myth, and every unanswered question, there exists something profoundly human: the need to search, the need to wonder, the need to believe that reality still contains hidden corners beyond ordinary understanding. Perhaps ancient mysteries survive because humans themselves are unfinished, still searching for meaning, still searching for origins, still searching for answers hidden somewhere between science, history, religion, and imagination. And perhaps that search will never truly end, because as long as ancient ruins remain standing beneath moonlit skies, as long as forgotten texts remain buried beneath the earth, and as long as humanity continues looking upward into the darkness of the unknown, these stories will continue to survive.